In the name of the one holy and living God. Amen. Please be seated. Can you all hear me at the back of the church? If you can't, please raise your hand. Okay? I may drop off. I am the good shepherd. What comforting words! The most popular image in early Christian art was the good shepherd. But because of persecutions, imperial persecutions in the 2nd and 3rd century, Christian practice and Christian religious imagery both had to be hidden. In the city of Rome, that art was literally underground. It was painted in fresco decorations above and around tombs in the catacombs, the vast underground chambers cut into volcanic tufa, where all ordinary people, Christians, pagans, and Jews alike, were buried. In Roman tomb decorations, Jesus was shown, not identified in any way, but shown as a simple man, with a couple of sheep at his feet and one laid carefully over his shoulders. So the reference was vague, but unmistakable to early believers. I am the good shepherd. The words and the images are still comforting to us today. But Jesus' talk in John was not meant to be comforting. Instead, he was teaching his followers about the cost of discipleship, and he was scolding the Pharisees. Jesus had just given sight to the men born blind. The Pharisees were furious, and they hounded the man, arguing with him and trying to discount the miracle. Finally, in frustration, the man sought Jesus out. He declared his belief in Jesus as the Son of Man, and he worshipped Jesus. Now the Pharisees were being told off, likened to the faithless hired hands in the Good Shepherd story. They are not having a good day. We're in the Easter season, and we've heard a couple of Jesus' post-resurrection stories, the appearances to the disciples. So why is our lectionary taking us back to Jesus' life before the crucifixion? And why from the Gospel of John? I can't speak for the folks who put the lectionary together, but it struck me that John's Gospel speaks clearly and strongly to three key issues. Who was Jesus? Who are we as Jesus' followers? And what does Jesus call us to be and to do in the world? That's what I want to talk about today. Who is Jesus? From the outset, John's Gospel says that Jesus is God. Boldly, in the preface, he writes, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God." Jesus' voice in John is very different from that in the Synoptic Gospels. So uniquely in John, Jesus identifies himself with God in the 7 I am statements that are laced through the Gospel. I am the bread of life. I am the light of the world. I am the door of the sheep. I am the good shepherd. I am the resurrection and the life. I am the way, the truth, and the life. I am the true vine. The self-identification with God is unequivocal, and that's because Jesus' words for I am, in Greek, are ego eimi, are God's own words in Exodus 3:14. That's where Moses asked God's name, and God replied, I am, ego eimi. Later, this 10th chapter of John, Jesus says outright, I and the Father are one. In John, Jesus is God from the very beginning and all the way through. What about Jesus' followers? What does John's Jesus say? We are, and who we are to be. In John, that takes shape in Jesus' farewell discourse to the disciples on the night before the crucifixion. Tenderly, Jesus calls them little children. And then he embraces them and includes them and all of us in the mystical unity with God. When he says, in a little while, the world will no longer see me, but you will see me. Because I live, you also will live. On that day, you will know that I am in my Father, and you in me, and I in you. So, we too are one with God and Jesus. Most importantly, Jesus commands us to be a community united in God's love, saying, as the Father has loved me, so I have loved you. Abide in my love. This is my commandment, that you love one another as I have loved you. Finally, what does Jesus call us to do as his disciples? Quite simply, follow me. Follow the example of Jesus' words and deeds. Jesus created a community united in prayer and love and service. He listened for God's lead in every moment. He reached out to welcome all people into that first beloved community, defying boundaries of gender, culture, class, and creed that would exclude anyone. Just two examples in John are Jesus' long talk with the Samaritan woman at the well, who was excluded as a woman and despised because of her faith. And then the healing of the man born blind, who was judged a sinner and shunned because of a simple birth defect. Both of these outsiders recognized Jesus before his own disciples did, and they became his followers. Like the Good Shepherd, we are called lovingly to care for and protect one another. Jesus taught that love is an action verb. Love means risking, even making the ultimate sacrifice for the good of others. It could be literally taking a bullet for someone, as San Diego Elementary School teacher Victoria Lee Soto did, dying to protect her pupils. Or it may mean bearing witness for a stranger in distress, as 17-year-old Darnella Frazier did when she courageously filmed the murder of George Floyd. The evidence in her report of that cruel, brutal crime lifted the veil on injustice against blacks for all of the world to see. Claudia and I lived in Minneapolis for 6 years. Like many who have dwelt in hope and dread since Floyd's death, we were deeply relieved with the guilty verdict that came down last week. It's so important, but it's just one step on the long road to a truly just society. For our Minnesota friends, reports we know that in these dark days, the light of faith has burned all the more brightly and urgently in the Twin Cities. It has been kindled, stoked, and held aloft by those who were brave enough to be it, in the words of Emmanuel. Among those fiercely brave souls are Sandra and Dan Sandoz. For many years, they have lived and worked and prayed to establish racial equity and justice on Minneapolis' North Side, which is a neighborhood socially and economically cursed for generations by the legacy of racist red line. During the trial of Derek Chauvin, Don Sandoz launched Healing Our City, a virtual prayer tent on Facebook. This virtual beloved community drew in people of every color, creed, and background from all over the globe, who gathered to pray daily in the morning for justice and healing. Each session begins with a brief reflection by a different speaker. It may be a priest, it may be a writer, it may be a songwriter, a poet, remarkable people, followed by 8 minutes and 42 seconds of silent prayer. This virtual prayer time continues, and you're welcome to listen, either to join in the whole morning as they continue through May, or to look back and listen to some of the moving reflections that have been shared. Becoming faithful to Jesus' call is a lifelong journey, and I would like to close with a personal note. I was reared with love and respect for people of color. Still, and shamefully, only in recent years have I waked up to the fact that I was blind. A wasp in a culture of white privilege, I was blind to how much of the centuries-long cruel injustice is still inflicted on people of color. Some of whom loved and cared for me as a child. I loved them as well, but far, far too passively. The time in COVID shutdown has helped me better to see my own ignorance, my own prejudices and blindness, to stop, look, listen, and delve into the history and reality of racial injustice more deeply than ever, and to commit more fully to changing. I was blind, indeed. Guided by the light of Christ's commandment to love in action, I now see more clearly what, as a disciple, I am called to be and to do. Thanks.